On Wednesday, Donald Trump stood in the White House and accepted a trophy from coal executives, a literal trophy, naming him the undisputed champion of beautiful, clean coal. The next day, he killed the federal government's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Not reduced it, not reformed it, killed it. The EPA revoked the 2009 endangerment, finding the legal foundation for every federal climate regulation in the country. Vehicle emission standards gone, power plant limits gone, the legal obligation to do anything about climate pollution at all gone, and he called it the single largest deregulatory action in American history. He's right. It is, and that's not the flex he thinks it is. So here's what actually happened and why this matters more than almost anything else this administration has done. In 2007, the Supreme Court ruled that greenhouse gases are air pollutants under the Clean Air Act and that the EPA is required to determine whether they endanger public health. In 2009, under Obama, the EPA did exactly that. After years of scientific review, they issued the endangerment, finding a formal determination that carbon dioxide, methane, and 4 other greenhouse gases threaten public health and welfare. That finding became the legal backbone for regulating emissions from cars, trucks, power plants, oil and gas facilities, basically everything that heats the planet. It survived legal challenges. It was upheld by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court denied further review. Even during Trump's first term, they tried to revoke it and couldn't because the science was too strong. The science is even stronger now, but they did it anyway. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. When the EPA first proposed this repeal last summer, they cited a report written by 5 climate contrarians handpicked by Energy Secretary Chris Wright that questioned the severity of wildfires, extreme heat, and storms. Environmental groups sued. A federal court ordered the Department of Energy to turn over records about who wrote it and how. That case is still pending. But in the final rule, the EPA quietly shifted its justification. Instead of leaning on that junk science, they now claim the Clean Air Act simply doesn't give them the authority to regulate greenhouse gases. That's a legal argument, not a scientific one, and it directly contradicts what the Supreme Court already ruled in 2007. Climate scientist Zeke Hausfather put it plainly, the scientific understanding of human-driven climate change is far stronger today than it was in 2009 when the finding was first issued. There is no scientific basis for this repeal. Zero. They know it. That's why they stopped arguing the science and started arguing the law. But here's where it gets ironic. And I mean deeply structurally ironic. Legal experts are now warning that revoking the endangerment finding may actually expose fossil fuel companies to more lawsuits, not fewer. Here's why. In 2011, the Supreme Court ruled that companies couldn't be sued under federal common law for greenhouse gas emissions because the EPA was already handling it through regulation. The endangerment finding was the shield. You can't sue us, the company said. The EPA regulates this. Well, Trump just removed the EPA from the equation. And now legal scholars are saying that SHIELD is gone. States and cities can now bring public nuisance lawsuits directly against power companies, oil companies, anyone emitting greenhouse gases at scale. A University of Maryland law professor called it another classic case where overreach by the Trump administration comes back to bite it. Even the Edison Electric Institute, the trade group that represents power utilities, warned last year that revoking the finding could trigger a wave of litigation. The companies he's supposedly helping don't even want this. California Governor Newsom said the state will sue immediately. The American Lung Association and American Public Health Association announced legal challenges within hours. Earthjustice said they'll see the administration in court. So why do it? If the science doesn't support it and the companies don't want it, why? Because this was never about deregulation. It's about the Supreme Court. Legal experts say the administration rushed this repeal through at record speed. Specifically so, the legal challenges reach the current conservative supermajority while Trump is still in office. A Harvard law professor called it swinging for the fences. If the court upholds the repeal, no future administration, Democratic or Republican, will be able to regulate greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act, ever. That's the long game. Lock in fossil fuel dominance, not for 4 years, but permanently. And the day before he signed this, he stood in that same White House accepting a trophy from coal lobbyists, a trophy they invented for him, for championing the most carbon-intensive fuel on Earth while the planet is on fire. They're not even pretending anymore. The United States is now the only nation on Earth that has withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, exited the UN climate framework, and revoked its own scientific finding that pollution is dangerous. The only one. Physics doesn't negotiate, and neither should we. Share this